The classroom was quiet, save for the faint hum of summer crickets outside the open window. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest, each beat screaming that I shouldn't be here, alone with Mr. Elias Harper, my history teacher, after hours. But his warm, steady voice had a way of pulling me in. Like gravity, I couldn't fight. I'm Julian Torres, 25, fresh out of college and back in my sleepy hometown of Willow Creek, Pennsylvania, to student teach under Elias. I'd always been the quiet kid, the one who hid his sketches in notebooks and his heart behind a shy smile. Growing up gay in a place like this felt like walking a tightrope, every step careful, every glance a risk. But Elias, with his sharp jawline, kind hazel eyes, and a laugh that felt like sunlight, made me want to step off that rope and fall. That afternoon, I stayed late to help grade papers. The room smelled of chalk, dust, and old books, and the golden light of dusk painted the walls. Elias leaned over my shoulder, pointing at a student's essay, his breath warm against my ear. "You're good at this, Julian," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "You see the story in their words." My skin prickled, and I dared to look up, our faces inches apart. His eyes held something I couldn't name, something that made my chest ache with hope and fear. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat, and handed me a folded note. "Read this later," he said, his voice unsteady. "When you're alone." I shoved the note into my pocket, my fingers trembling. What could he possibly have to say that couldn't be said out loud? Willow Creek wasn't the kind of place where secrets stayed buried, and I'd learned to keep mine locked tight. But Elias was different. He was 27, openly gay, and unafraid in a way I envied. He'd moved here a year ago from Seattle, bringing with him a quiet confidence that turned heads and raised whispers. The town loved him for his charm and hated him for his truth. I was caught somewhere in between, drawn to him like a moth to a flame, terrified of getting burned. That night, in my tiny apartment above the town's only coffee shop, I unfolded the note. His handwriting was neat, deliberate. "Julian, I see you. Not just the teacher you're becoming, but you. Meet me at the lake tomorrow at dusk. Elias." My breath caught. This was dangerous. He was my mentor, my supervisor. But the way he looked at me, the way his hand lingered when he passed me a bouquet, felt like more than mentorship. It felt like a promise. The next day, I stood by Lake Willow, the water reflecting the fading pink sky. Elias was already there, sitting on a flat rock, his dark curls catching the breeze. He wore a faded blue jacket, his hands stuffed in the pockets like he was nervous. "You came," he said, standing as I approached. His smile was soft, but his eyes were stormy, like he was wrestling with something big. I didn't know if I should, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. It's risky, Elias." He nodded, stepping closer. "I know, but I'm tired of hiding. Julian, aren't you?" His words hit like a punch. I'd spent my life hiding me sketches, my feelings, my truth. But here was Elias, standing in the open, asking me to be brave. He reached out, his fingers brushing mine, and for a moment, the world was just us, 2 hearts beating against the weight of a small town's judgment. But Willow Creek wasn't kind to people like us. The rumors had already started. Whispers about the new teacher and the quiet kid spending too much time together. I'd heard them at the diner, seen the sidelong glances at the gas station. And then there was Sarah Klein, the school board president's daughter, who'd had a crush on Elias since he arrived. She wasn't subtle about it, and she wasn't kind. If she caught wind of this, it wouldn't just be gossip, it'd be a wildfire. The days that followed were a blur of stolen glances and quiet moments. Elias and I graded papers late, our knees brushing under the desk. He'd tell me stories of his life in Seattle, where he'd marched in pride parades and kissed his first boyfriend under a streetlight. I told him about my sketches, how I drew the world I wished I could live in, a world where I wasn't afraid. Each conversation felt like peeling back a layer, revealing more of ourselves. But every moment was laced with danger. The town was watching, and Sarah Klein was no fool. One afternoon, As we organized books in the classroom, Sarah burst in, her blonde hair swinging, her eyes sharp as knives. "Working late again, Mr. Harper?" she asked, her voice syrupy but edged with suspicion. She glanced at me, her lips curling into a smirk. "Julian, you're awfully dedicated for a student teacher." Elias didn't flinch. "He's a good teacher, Sarah. Dedicated's the right word." His tone was calm, but I saw the tension in his jaw. She lingered, her eyes darting between us, then left with a huff. My stomach churned. She knew something, or she suspected it. Either way, it wasn't good. That night, Elias texted me, "Meet me at the old barn on Route 12. 9 p.m. The barn was a relic, abandoned years ago, hidden by overgrown fields. It was a place where no one would find us. I drove there under a starless sky, my heart racing. Elias was waiting, leaning against the weathered wood, a lantern casting soft light on his face. "I needed to see you," he said, his voice raw. "Away from all this." We sat on a blanket inside the barn, the air thick with the scent of hay and dust. He told me about his past, how he'd lost friends when he came out, how he'd fought to be himself. I told him about the time I'd kissed a boy at summer camp, how I'd run away afterward, terrified of what it meant. We laughed, we cried, and then, in a moment that felt like a dream, he leaned in and kissed me. It was soft, tentative, but it set my world on fire. I kissed him back, my hands finding his, and for the first time, I felt free. But freedom in Willow Creek came at a cost. The next morning, I found an anonymous note slipped under my apartment door. "I know what you're doing. Stop, or everyone will know." My blood ran cold. I showed it to Elias at school, and his face hardened. "This town," he muttered. "They can't stand seeing people happy." We decided to be careful, to keep our distance at school. But it was hard. Every time he smiled at me, every time his hand brushed mine, I wanted to pull him close and forget the world. The notes kept coming. Those slipped into my mailbox, taped to my car. Each one was more threatening, more specific. "You and Harper won't last. Leave town, or else." I started looking over my shoulder, jumping at every noise. Elias was braver, but I could see the worry in his eyes. The breaking point came at the town's annual harvest festival. The air smelled of caramel apples and wood smoke, and the park was alive with music and laughter. Elias and I went separately, blending into the crowd. But Sarah Klein found us. She cornered me by the Ferris wheel, her voice low and venomous. "I know about you and Elias," she hissed. "My dad's on the school board. One word from me, and you're both done." I froze, my heart in my throat. "Sarah, please," I started, but she cut me off. "You don't belong here, Julian. Neither does he." She walked away, leaving me shaking. I found Elias by the bonfire, his face lit by the flames. I told him what happened, and he took my hand, hidden in the shadows. "We'll figure this out," he said. "Together." But Sarah wasn't bluffing. The next day, the school board called an emergency meeting. Rumors had reached them, rumors about inappropriate behavior between a teacher and a student teacher. Elias was called in first, then me. The room was cold, the board members' faces like stone. Sarah's father, Mr. Klein, led the charge, his voice dripping with disdain. "We can't have this kind of scandal in Willow Creek," he said. "Mr. Harper, you're suspended pending investigation. Mr. Torres, your student teaching is terminated." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Elias tried to argue, but they wouldn't listen. As we left the room, he grabbed my arm. "This isn't over," he whispered. "They don't get to win." We met at the lake that night, the water black under the moonless sky. Elias was angry, pacing, his hands clenched into fists. "I'm not leaving," he said. "I've fought too hard to be who I am. They can't take that from me." I wanted to be as strong as he was, but fear was choking me. What if they tell everyone? I asked. What if they ruin us? He stopped, turning to me, his eyes fierce. Then we tell the truth first. We don't hide. Julian. Not anymore. He pulled me into his arms, and I let myself cry, the weight of everything crashing down. But in his embrace, I found something new: courage. The next day, Elias did something I never expected. He posted a letter on the town's online forum, open for everyone to see. It was raw, honest, and fearless. He wrote about being gay, about finding love in a place that tried to smother it, about refusing to be ashamed. He didn't name me, but he didn't need to. The letter was for us, for everyone who'd ever felt like they had to hide. The town erupted. Some called him brave. Others called him reckless. Sarah's father demanded his resignation, but students rallied, sharing stories of how Elias had inspired them to be themselves. I watched it unfold, my heart swelling with pride and terror. Then I made my own choice. I posted a sketch on Linnea drawing of two hands clasped, one with Elias's watch, the other with my ring. Under it, I wrote, "Love is worth fighting for." The fallout was messy. Elias was reinstated after a heated board meeting, thanks to student protests and a few supportive parents. I was allowed to finish my student teaching, but the whispers never stopped. Sarah moved away, her influence fading, but the notes stopped coming. Willow Creek didn't change overnight, but it cracked open, just enough for us to breathe. Elias and I moved to Pittsburgh a year later, where we could walk hand in hand without looking over our shoulders. We built a life together, teaching, sketching, loving. But I'll never forget that classroom in Willow Creek, where a note changed everything. It wasn't just love we found, it was the courage to claim it, no matter the cost.